All right, I'm going to start recording. Excuse me. So aggravating.
Amy, do you expect to go for the whole hour?
I wouldn't.
All right, I'm going to start admitting people. So.
Okay, we'll mind our manners.
I'm going to admit all and see what happens.
Here we go. Familiar faces.
All right, let's get underway.
Okay. Well, it's 7 o'clock, and I think we can get started now. Walter, are we ready to roll?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are we sure?
Yep.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'm Amy LeCoq. This is our Township Future Q&A session. We're glad that you could all join us. We may have some others joining us as the hour progresses, but it is good to see you all. Last 3 weeks ago when we did this for our first info session, we couldn't see you and we missed that. So this time we decided to have it so everybody can see everybody else. I did take the opportunity to take a look at the registrations that we received for this Q&A session tonight. And I thought I would share some of that with you. We had two former township directors who registered for this Q&A session. We have several WCA, TWA, or TCID board members, which, as most of you know, that is the precursor to the township, those organizations. We have a village president and several village board members, and we also have some local business owners. So it's a nice representation, as well as I can see mud directors in the group. So you've all expressed interest in learning more about Township Future, and we thank you for that. Some of you are also interested in supporting good candidates and actively campaigning for those candidates. So we were thrilled to see that. And we were also pleased to see that some of you are interested in running as a candidate for the Township Board. This is going to be a Q&A format tonight. This is the first time that we've tried a Q&A format. So bear with us. We are learning the technology, and I think we've got it mostly mastered. So bear with us if there's any little glitches in it. But we wanted to give you all a chance to ask us questions and kind of get answers to what was on your minds. So if you would, we did receive a few questions in response to the email, and we'll probably start with those, but feel free to use the chat feature on Zoom. And if you know where that is, it's on the lower bar, the bar below the screen where I see Walter on my screen. I don't know what you see. And then the chat where it looks like a comic strip. It says chat. Click on that and just send your question in. And Kira Becker, who is our Township Future Secretary, will be handling all those questions and asking those questions. Okay.
Kara, could I interrupt?
Yeah.
Where's noise coming from? Some people have not started their video. All participants can click on video and watch the meeting. So if you want to, please go ahead and do that.
I think they can watch. We just can't see them unless they click the video.
Mhm.
So, okay. Well, I know some of you attended the meeting that we did have 3 weeks ago, kind of our intro session. And I also know some of you didn't. So what I thought I would do before we started with questions is just kind of give you the Reader's Digest version, the really, really condensed version of what we talked about 3 weeks ago, which is basically, you know, what is this Township Future? Township Future is a PAC. In fact, we filed our first financial report last year with the Texas Ethics Commission. So we chose a PAC. A PAC is a very transparent kind of organization, as opposed to some other organizations that are out there. We chose that purposefully because we want to be transparent. Transparency is important to us. So is the promotion of good governance and practices. So we wanted to form an organization that would reflect that. We basically have 3 guiding principles, and I'm going to go through those super quick, although they are important. One is to keep taxes low, the lowest possible tax that we can assess, and still provide the services that we expect in the woodlands. Number 2 is limited government. Our local government works best, we think, when it's nimble and able to react to the needs of the residents and the businesses in the woodlands. We are not in favor of bloated bureaucracies. Number 3, and this is important, we respect the township's history and character of in caring and coming together for all residents in our community. And that has been the case in our community from its inception. No matter what form of government we had at any given time, that has remained constant and an important and distinguishing feature of the woodlands. Okay, we did something else when we formed. We created a charter, and you don't have to create a charter to form a PAC, but we thought it was important to kind of set forth what our intentions were. And our intentions are that we are woodlands focused. We are really focused on only what affects the woodlands residents and the woodlands businesses. And the way we look at any issue that might come up is what's best for the community. Okay, we are not political. And at first, sometimes people don't understand that. How can you be a PAC and you're not political? Well, we are not partisan. We are nonpartisan. And that means that we are focused only in elections that are nonpartisan. And that means that the candidates that are running are not running in the name of a particular party. They're running as a resident of the woodlands for the township board, or a constituent of CISD or TSID for the school board, or in a MUD. They're a customer of the MUD and they're running as themselves, not representing a party, for the MUD board. So there are a number of these very local government entities that are nonpartisan. And the ones that I've mentioned in particular greatly affect, you know, our quality of life in the woodlands. And so we're going to start out with the township board, but we may at some point consider expanding to some of these other non-partisan offices. So there's that. Okay. And basically, just to kind of put a pin in it, it's community over politics. We are not in this, in this to be political animals. We're in it because we care about this community, and we want the community to continue to be the outstanding community that it is. Okay, so that's the Reader's Digest version of what we did 3 weeks ago. I was teasing that, if you're a young person or you have a young person in your life, these days they might call it the TikTok version rather than the Reader's Digest version. But to me, I'm old, so it's the Reader's Digest version. Okay, so I think we can get started with some questions. And the way we are going to try to do this is Kira has the questions that were sent in ahead of time, and she will be fielding all of your questions. If you have questions, just chat them. Again, it's, at the lower part of your screen, and it looks like a comic strip bubble. That's the chat button. Just click on that and just type your question in, and she'll go ahead and ask the question, and we'll see where it goes.
Awesome.
Okay. And
Great.
this is Kira Becker, Secretary of the Steering Committee.
Hi, everyone. Good to see you. Thanks for taking time to join us tonight. We're really excited about what we've been working on, and so we're excited to have all of you join us so we can talk more about it. A lot of people have questions, so please, any question, it doesn't matter, use that button at the bottom of the screen, just like Amy said. So we do have some good questions just to kind of start tonight's conversation. And I'll pose them to Amy, and then Amy, you can direct, if you want me to answer or Walter to answer, we can go that route as well. So why don't we start with the first question? Who runs TownshipFuture?
Who runs TownshipFuture? Well, the way we've established it, we have a steering committee that runs TownshipFuture. And there are 5 members on the steering committee. I serve as president. Walter Cook serves as our vice president and treasurer, so he's got double duty. Kira serves as our secretary, and then we have 2 additional steering committee members, Bob Lilac and Rob Johnson. So the 5 of us are I guess you would say, the governing board of TownshipFuture.
Mm-hmm. Great, good group.
Very good group.
And is TownshipFuture affiliated with any groups or political parties? I think you've addressed this before, but I want to make sure that we're getting through these questions.
Okay. No, we are not. We are not affiliated with any political party, and we are not affiliated with any other organization. Now, this may not be answering your question directly, but there are everybody on our steering committee is a busy, active, community-involved person. So, among all of us, we have, people who serve on many nonprofit boards. For example, Bob Lilac, he's treasurer of his prison ministry organization that he's been involved in a number of years. He also serves on a MUD. He is on the Grogan's Mill Village Association, or was. I don't know if you're still on or not, Bob, but he's somebody who's been actively involved in this community for a number of years. So we all have other things that we do, but for TownshipFuture, we on purpose defined what we do pretty narrowly and specifically so that we keep to our mission.
Absolutely. Good. And Amy, can you talk a little bit about when Township Future was formed? And it might be good, this wasn't a part of the question that was posed, but maybe when you talk about when we started, you can also talk a little bit about what we've done since when we started.
Okay. I'm going to throw the first part of this question to Walter Cook, and then I'll take the second part back myself. But Walter Cook, as I said, our vice president and our treasurer, he wrote our charter. So Walter was very instrumental in getting us up and running. Obviously, before you do anything with a PAC, you have to have a treasurer. And so he also played that part as well. But Walter, would you like to maybe speak in a little bit more depth about the charter and how things got started in February?
Sure. Thanks, Amy. Yes, in February, a group of us, Amy, and basically our steering committee started talking together about forming a political group to provide a choice in the Woodlands. As a result of last November's election, you know, we have a township board that I think, but for one member, is totally, you know, part of and adheres to a particular ideology or view of the world. And it was our feeling that we needed some a more diverse board. The voters needed more of a choice, and so that was kind of the impetus in forming Township Future. And we we had some. This is for all you lawyer nerds, interesting talks about whether to create a nonprofit corporation or a PAC, and we eventually decided on a PAC because it's easy. But one thing, as Amy mentioned, that distinguishes us, we wrote a charter and we had lots of discussion about what would be in that charter. And mainly it's to promote, to recruit and support candidates for these nonpartisan boards that Amy mentioned, and to address issues that affect the Woodlands. And the reason we created that charter was to prevent mission creep. We did not want to, you know, start this organization and then, you know, 6 months later, a year later, find us thinking about, you know, endorsing somebody for county judge. That's a partisan position. We're not into that. So anytime somebody gets, you know, the itch to kind of expand our mission, we've got our charter we can wave in front of everybody and say, look, this is what we agreed to do, and we're going to stick to that, and unless we amend the charter. But so that's how it started in February, and it's worked quite well. We report to the Texas Ethics Commission. We've got to file semi-annual campaign finance reports. And the first deadline was July 15th, and we got ours filed timely, thank goodness. And as Amy mentioned, it's a very transparent process. We have to list each contributor, the amount contributed, their address, and their occupation. And all that's public record. And so you can go to the Texas Ethics Commission website and find our report, plus reports for all other PACs in the state of Texas as well. Luckily, since we're local, we don't have to report to the Internal Revenue Service. That's another layer that we're not involved in, thank goodness. Because we're strictly local, we're not federal. Did I answer the question, Amy? I ran on. I kind of forgot what you asked me.
That's good. That's good. And, you know, I talked about the steering committee earlier, and that is our governing board. But we also rely very heavily on our a committee structure that does a lot of the work of the Township Future. We have a vetting committee, which will be very soon vetting township director candidates once the filing is closed. So they have been busy preparing, you know, a procedure and, you know, kind of how that will work. There's going to be a written questionnaire for folks to fill out, and then an opportunity to come and chat with the vetting committee. So that vetting committee's been working hard, and they're going to be roll right into action after August 17th when the filing deadline closes. We also have a candidate support committee, which is focused on how Township Future can best support candidates that are vetted and determined to be candidates that we choose to endorse. So they are working to put together kind of packages of how we can help candidates. You know, people think about PACs giving money. Yes, you know, we will support our candidates financially, but sometimes that's not the most important thing that candidates need, especially in these local elections. Right. You know, because the candidates are not professional politicians. They don't have, you know, huge organizations behind them to support them. So, you know, on our Walter ran in November, and Bob has run for township director in the past as well. And Kira has worked many campaigns, and I have worked some campaigns as well. So we have some experience that, you know, we can share with the candidates. And, you know, in terms of how to get your campaign set up, what you need, what you don't need. This race will probably be a little unique. The whole year of 2020 has been unique. You know, COVID has changed everything. So the typical way of campaigning in the Woodlands, which is you go to meetings where there are groups of people and you talk to them about what you stand for and try to encourage them to vote and to vote for you. You know, that's not all that candidates do, but that's a good piece of it. That option may not be available the entire campaign season. So social media will become very important. It's already very important, but it'll become even more important. And, you know, maybe, you know, the idea of mailers or, you know, other things will take on more importance this year. So the candidate support committee is working on how to best support our candidates. And if we ever get back to having events, we'll have an events committee. And we're in the process of establishing a communications committee as well. So you asked about what else we do, and we, in addition to what I've talked about with the candidates, we also, part of our mission is to educate and to advocate on issues that are important to the Woodlands residents. So, you know, communicating, let's face it, I mean, I don't always get the villager delivered on my doorstep like I used to in the Woodlands. And it's, you know, I read it online, and so, and I imagine a lot of you do too. The Houston Chronicle doesn't really cover us. Community Impact is a wonderful newspaper as well as the Villager and the Courier, but we only get it once a month. So trying to get good information out to people, factual information about issues, can be difficult. And that's why we're forming a communications, one of the reasons we're forming a communications committee is to try to help educate, keep people informed about what is going on in the community, and particularly the township board. Lost my train of thought there. You know, we have already gotten involved, for example, in the issue with when Brian Boniface resigned from the township board to do his military service. And he, you know, he did not resign properly, and they did not appoint properly. And it wouldn't have been discovered if one of our board members, our steering committee members, hadn't pointed that out to the township. Everything would have just gone on with an unlawful resignation and an unlawful appointment. But because we, looked into things, we found out that it was unlawful. And the township had to go back and ratify all the votes that the new director participated in because they weren't lawful votes. So it's, it's getting the word out, something like that, where the public was cut out of any kind of participation in that process. It was not done transparently, and it was not done legally. Those are the kind of things that, could have just passed with nobody recognizing it. So one of the things that we are trying to do is, it's not like we're a gotcha squad, that's not it at all, but we just want to try to educate people about what is actually going on and what the issues are, what the facts are. Everybody can draw their own opinions, but what are the facts? And if there are important issues, we will take a position on the issue and not only educate, but advocate. So that is the other piece of what we do, the important piece of what we do.
Great. Thank you. That was a good overview, Amy. I think leading off of that, some of the questions that I'm seeing come in really are around the township board itself. What governing authority does the Woodlands Township possess, and have those boundaries been violated by the current board? If so, how specifically? And I think you touched on some of that just now when you're talking about, lack of process applied in Director Nelson's appointment and some of these votes. But maybe you could talk a little bit more about what the township board is. It's a special purpose district, and that's very different than a lot of local boards.
It is, and it's our enabling legislation, and we've got the expert sitting right here, Walter Cook, who has read and thoroughly studied our enabling legislation. We are a legislatively created entity. So Walter, why don't you take this one?
Sure. The township is what they call a special purpose district. Special purpose districts really came about because of the great population expansion in Harris County outside of cities. You had all this area in unincorporated Harris County, and developers wanted a way to, provide infrastructure without shelling out all the money up front. So the legislature started creating MUDs. Of course, we have MUDs that take care of our water and sewer in the woodlands. So that was the first thing that happened. And then over the years, they've used this power to create much broader types of entities. There was one entity, of course I can't remember it now, that it was very similar to the woodlands in that it's given a lot of power. It's not a city, it's not a town, it's not an incorporated entity, but it has a lot of, it can provide a lot of community type services, and it's run by a board of directors, and that's the township board. And then we have a staff. You may have heard Don Norrell is the general manager of the Woodlands. He's the head of the paid staff. He's kind of like a city manager. He runs the staff that provides parks and rec, and we contract with Montgomery County for enhanced police service. We've got a private nonprofit highly rated fire department. And then of course the MUDs, which are separate political entities, provide our water and sewer. So it's a complicated setup, but it works surprisingly well here in the woodlands. And since it is a legislative entity, the township has had to go back to the legislature in repeated sessions to, tweak its enabling legislation and make a few things clear and try to give us more powers. So that's basically what we are. And the enabling legislation is really something to read because there are all kinds of powers there that the township has never really tried to use, and there's a lot there.
Mhm.
So that's kind of it in a nutshell. We're not incorporated, we're not a city, we're a special purpose district or entity.
Mhm.
Thanks,
So,
Walter.
thank you. The second part of the question that was submitted with that is, I, I'm going to link it with another question that's come in. Also, is have the boundaries of the governing authority of the township been violated by the current board? And the other question is, what triggered the formation of the PAC? And I think those two questions kind of fit together. Amy, if you want to take those and talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. I think Walter hinted at some of this earlier. But I think that there has been a feeling that the board has been monopolized, and that there were not independent thinkers on the board. And this group, above everything else, does not want people who agree with us, because we don't even always agree with each other sometimes. It's not about that. Everybody's laughing because they know it's true, guys, okay? It's not about having, people who agree with us on every issue or agree with any one of us on every issue. It's about having people who are willing to take a look at the facts and the law and the issues, and then bring some common sense, some good judgment, and some independent thinking to the game, and make a decision in the best interest of the community. And that's really that's why we formed, that's what we're looking for. We don't, we don't need people who are making decisions in their own political interest. We don't need people who are making decisions because other people are telling them to make that decision. We just want people, who will use their own good judgment and make decisions in the best interest of the community. And that's how we can continue to be the kind of place that everybody wants to live in. Is that responsive to the question?
I think that's good. And if I can add a little bit, just a kind of a personal view, I think right now with so much division in the country and everything, we do see groups. I'll use it's a bipartisan group, but the Problem Solvers Caucus in Congress is a group of people coming together, no matter what their political leanings are, to work together to solve problems and to look at the big problems facing the country. And I think in the same vein, Township Future is really wanting people to come together to look at the big problems facing our community, to focus on fixing those, like you said, regardless of the political ideology, and without wanting to get personal political gain from an outcome.
And Kira, you made a good point that I should have mentioned earlier, and that is that we're not only interested in pointing out areas that need improvement. We actually, for example, when I discussed about the vacancy and the appointment and the problems that arose because of the lack of policy, we proposed a policy. We drafted, and we actually have 3 lawyers on the steering committee, if you can believe that. And we drafted a policy, a proposed policy, a draft policy, and gave it to the township for their consideration. Now, did we think they were going to take it and put their stamp on it and say, done, this is our policy? Probably not, probably not. But there were pieces of it that were very important to making sure that the process going forward is a standardized process, not a process that meets whatever the current conditions are, that it's a process that's transparent, and that it's a process that allows the residents some input into the decision making. The board appoints. There's no question about that. I mean, the residents don't decide who that appointee will be, but it would have been nice if people could have had the opportunity to nominate candidates to be considered for that position. To come and speak to the board and answer their questions and be interviewed for that spot. Things like that, it didn't happen this last go around. And, Township Future was concerned that absent a policy, it wouldn't happen like that in the future either. So by establishing a policy that the board would follow, we thought that was the way to go. And so we didn't just point out the errors, we proposed a solution. And we want to be problem solving. That's important to us. It's not the end of the story to point out a problem. That's only the beginning of the story. We need to, think about how to fix it. So.
Right. There's a quote that the answer for a bad idea is a better idea, and we want to come with the better idea and always keep proposing those solutions to solve problems. So thank you. So pivoting just a little bit, we've talked a little bit about the township and the enabling legislation, how the board governs, and what triggered the formation of the PAC. Can you talk a little bit about what the plan is for candidates? I'm going to give you kind of 3 parts here. One, what type of interest have we seen from candidates or potential candidates? And then what's the plan for vetting the candidates? What are the qualifications that we're really looking for with the candidates? And then who is going to make the decision on those final endorsements that we'll move forward with?
Let me start at the end, and then I may throw this over to Walter if he wants it. The way the vetting process is going to work, I think I mentioned earlier, the vetting committee has been busy putting together the process, and they've done an excellent job of focusing in on just those points that are important. How community oriented somebody is, whether they have the time, all the different factors that go into somebody who would make a good township director. Being able to attend meetings, it sounds like a trivial thing, but it's really important because you can't do anything if you don't go to meetings. And we've had really good work coming out of the vetting committee. And then they will go ahead and interview all of the candidates who choose to be interviewed. And then they will make a recommendation to the steering committee. And then the steering committee will make the final decision. So that's the process. Walter, do you want to speak a little bit more about what we can do for candidates once we have found them? And let me just say this, because there may have been a little confusion. I saw one of the questions come in before we started about the positions. So maybe I could just say something about that, and then I'll throw it to Walter. There are 4 positions that are up for election in November. Position 1, position 2, position 3, and position 4, okay? As you all know, there are 7 members on the board, so that is actually a majority of the board that will be up for election in November. Filing started on Monday, and for position number 1, Gordy Bunch has filed. For position number 3, John Anthony Brown has filed. And for position number 4, Bruce Reeser has filed. Okay, and there could be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6 or 7 candidates running for each position. So you run only in that position. Each one has their own lane. So it's not everybody runs and whoever gets the most votes wins, and then who gets the second most and third and fourth most votes wins. That's, you run in a position, okay? So there could be, and we have had, I think, as many as 7 candidates running for one position, which is an electoral nightmare, because inevitably what happens when you have multiple candidates running, you have a director who is elected with less than a majority of the votes. And that's not, it's not good for the community, and it's really not good for the director either, because directors should feel like they have been elected by the majority of the residents. And it's not always possible, particularly when there are more than 2 candidates. So there's that. Walter, do you want to talk about what,
Yeah, sure.
once we've selected one candidate for each position, or however many candidates we're going to select, it would not be more than 1 for each position.
Yeah, let me kind of dovetail on to Amy's comments. Although you run for a position, each director is elected at large. Positions are not geographic. Everybody runs, everybody in the Woodlands has the right to vote on all candidates for all positions. Now, our approach to this is to vet and hopefully endorse some good candidates, but we're not going to run anybody's campaign. That's up to the candidate. We're not running slates. We're going to be making decisions on a candidate by candidate basis. Now, we realize we're going to be up against a formidable foe. We've got a well-oiled political machine in the Woodlands that's been extremely effective electing candidates time and time again. So, you know, we're not under any kind of Pollyannish view that this is going to be easy. So we're working on a benefits package for our endorsed candidates. It's going to include money. It costs money, and it costs big time money to run in these races, as I found out last November. But we're also going to try to put together some kind of a social media package, really not a package, but some vendors that we have had experience with that can help these candidates with social media. We've built a large email database that we'll make available to them. We want to introduce them to vendors that we know and trust who can do things like signs and bumper stickers and all the other paraphernalia that go with campaigns. And then we hope to provide a big volunteer force to do the block walking, the poll working, all the other boots on the ground type stuff that you have to do. And that's a big, I mean, that's a big package. But last November when I ran, I was kind of like the babe in the woods. I said, sure, I'll run. And I filed, and, you know, wham, you're in the middle of it, and you don't have a website, you don't have a Facebook page, you ain't got nothing. So you scramble around like a chicken with your head cut off, trying to find vendors that can do this and do that. And so hopefully we will put together a package that'll, you know, smooth that transition from, you know, good guy in the community to candidate. And it is a pretty big transition. Even if you've been down it before. I ran in 2005 for the WCA back in the good old days. And the difference between my 2005 run and my 2019 run was like night and day. We went from a small town, who do you know, work your way up through the system sort of, process to, kind of a almost no holds barred, big time campaign. And so we realize that, we understand that. So we're working hard to put this benefits package together. So that's where all of you come in. So we're going to be calling on people to, do what they want to do and give us some money, volunteer to walk blocks, stuff envelopes, whatever it takes to help our candidates get across the goal line.
Okay, great. And that's it. We're here to support, ultimately we are here to support the candidates. And we think we know some of the ways that we can do that. The candidates may also have some ideas about how we can do that once they get into the race, but that it's the, the candidates and supporting the candidates is the one part of what we do. And then the education and advocacy is the other part of what we do.
Mhm.
Kira, are you getting everybody's questions or are we
I think I'm getting most of them, but I may not get all of them. So I'm going to ask Walter here in a little bit if he's got any additional that we can go through. I
Sarah,
do
let me
have a
stop you
couple
right
more.
there. When in your chat down at the bottom, you should get a choice to send the questions, I believe, to me or Kira. If you'll send all your questions to Kira, then they don't have to go through me, and I just copy them and then paste them and send them to Kara. So if you'll just send your questions to Kara, will be great.
Yeah,
Sorry for the interruption.
we want to make sure we get everyone.
And
So
let me just say too, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's 7:46 and we will be done before 8. So, pick a couple of good questions. We'll give shorter answers because I'd like to try to get to everybody's questions. And if we have a few minutes at the end, we will turn everybody's mic on and we can we can all chat together for just a few minutes before we take off.
mhm.
Okay?
Yep.
All right.
So another question that came in, we're talking a little bit about vetting. Amy, I think you're probably the best to answer this. Since vetting is not going to start till the end of the filing period, is there going to be any coordination kind of between candidates prior to filing to avoid any strong candidates running against each other? You talked a little bit about what happens when, each of these races fills up and we split votes. We get to a scenario where the winner may not actually have the majority of votes. So can you talk a little bit about that and what TownshipFuture is doing?
Well, yeah, we are not, our intention is not to be a master of the universe. I mean, that is the furthest thing from what we are trying to do at all. We are not in control of anything, really. We are offering our support and making our support available to certain candidates who we don't know who they are yet. We'll find that out once everybody's filed and then we can start to vet. However, I will say again that if you have 2 candidates running, and only 2 candidates running for a given position, you are much more likely, in fact, you're almost guaranteed to have one of those 2 get at least 50% of the vote. Mm-hmm. And for the credibility of the election and for the, and for the candidate, whoever the candidate is who wins, it makes sense that that's a good thing, that the director is elected with more than 50% of the vote. We have had 2 races last time. Walter was involved in one of them. Where there were, for example, in Walter's race, there were 2 candidates whose positions were quite similar, and a third candidate whose position was quite different. And so that one candidate got like-minded people, and the other 2 split all the votes for the like-minded, from their like-minded people. And the candidate, who in this case was Shelley Sekula Gibbs, was elected with less than 50% of the votes. It's not a good thing for her. It's not a good thing for the township. It's not a good thing in general. Similar thing happened with Walt, who I see is on this call as well. Walt and Andy Dubois both ran against Bob Milner, and there was a 4th candidate in that race as well. So that Andy and Walt held very, very similar positions. In fact, it was a struggle to distinguish the 2, quite frankly. Both held very similar positions. And Director Milner held some different positions. So when the vote got split between Director Milner and Walt and Andy, Director Milner did not get 50%, and the other candidate, Director Milner did not get 50% of the vote. So I don't know what would have happened if he had only been running against one other person. Would he have, taken some of the votes and gone over 50%, or would the other candidate have won? Maybe that was the top of, the number of votes that he was going to get. I don't know. But I think it's important to have a discussion with candidates about electability and about how good campaigns can lose for reasons that have nothing to do with the candidates. You can have 2 very good candidates that are going to split one block vote. And so we don't want to lose good candidates that way, because we've seen how it happened in the last race, in the last election in November. And it's something that we would try to avoid. But we are not master of the universe. We can't orchestrate. We would not even presume to tell candidates what to do. But I would certainly be willing to talk to any candidate who wanted to talk about electability and how things played out last November, and the likelihood of how that could happen again.
Well, and Amy, talking a little bit about, talking with anyone who's interested in running and talking about electability, I think it would be good to walk through the candidate interest form that we have posted on our website. Our website is TownshipFuture.org. And if you go to the candidates tab, there is a form there that is an interest indicator. So if you'd like to start a conversation about potentially running this November, and if you would be a good candidate, Township Future is certainly willing to have that conversation. Amy, you can probably go into a little more depth on that.
I don't have it right in front of me. I think it's 6 questions. It's very short. It's not a long vetting questionnaire, which nobody wants to fill out long vetting questionnaires, but it does start a conversation. And it's anybody who's thinking about running, I would definitely encourage you to go to the website and take a look at that, even for yourself. I mean, we would like you to send it in to us so we could chat. But even if you're just thinking about running, it's some things to think about. It's some questions that our vetting committee put together that I think make a lot of sense for any candidate who's thinking about running.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
We're down to 5 minutes. Do you want to unmute everybody and
Do we have, are there any other questions though, Kira? I don't want to miss somebody's.
I've had a bunch come in here.
So while you're looking, let me just say this. It sounds like there are a lot of questions, and it may be that we go ahead and schedule another one of these, or schedule them intermittently, just to, you know, pick up questions that, you know, arise, new questions that arise. And it may be also, I want to just let folks know that in the future, we go ahead and do some other Zoom meetings that are issue-based, where we take a topic that, you know, has arisen that is important, and I'm talking about important topics that, you know, affect the residents of the Woodlands. And we might just do sort of a, you know, a little educational and discussion piece regarding an issue. So be on the, you know, the alert for that.
Mm-hmm. Amy, kind of one final question maybe before we open things up. You know, just to clarify, you know, Township Future has the goal of discussing important issues, raising important issues, and addressing them, advocating for them, but also, you know, supporting candidates. Can you just one last time walk through kind of the main goals of Township Future and how we're dividing our time between kind of the two tracks?
Okay. I don't know if I'm going to say anything new, but so we do have two tracks, as Kira indicated. The one track is to find and support good candidates to run for nonpartisan local offices. We're focused first on the township because I am, and I think the whole group is, a firm believer in starting with what you can manage, and, you know, mastering that, doing that well, and then expanding. So we're starting, at least right now, we're starting with the township board. And so there's the one track. The other track is the educational and advocacy, and that's issue oriented in terms of important issues that arise. And the example was the policy that we created for filling vacancies on the board. That was a very timely and a very, you know, it's a fundamental, it was an issue of fundamental fairness about how that was handled. And that was something that we, as the steering committee, felt that rose to a level that needed to be addressed. And so we did, and we addressed it, and we proposed a solution for moving forward. And that's what we intend to do on all issues that come up. Incorporation has obviously been something we've been talking about for 3 years now, really 3 years, and we'll continue to talk about. So although we have not taken any formal position on that, I can't imagine that we wouldn't weigh in on that issue and or pieces of that issue. You know, COVID has become really the priority for most things. And nobody wants to talk about COVID, I know. So
2 minutes left.
So let's unmute, and we're going to try. This is also a trial balloon. Let's see how it works if we unmute everybody, and then anybody that wants to leave, feel free to leave because we've met our hour rule. But anybody that wants to stay, if it works, we can maybe chat just a little bit and then say goodnight.
All right, I don't have the power to unmute everybody, but what I've done is allowed you to unmute yourself. So if you'll find in your control bar to the far right is a little microphone icon. If you clip that, I think it'll let you unmute.
It may be different for each person because mine's on the left, just so you know. It's somewhere down on that bottom bar.
The left, yeah. All right. Who wants to be the first verbal questioner? Emily has a question.
I've already asked these questions to Kira Becker, but I wanted to ask them just to the group. A couple of issues that have also come up over the COVID, issues that I've specifically written into one of the township members is the issue of diversity and inclusion in the township, particularly in light of the George Floyd massacres. And I don't know if anyone remembers this, but about 2 months ago or something, there was actually vandalism that was in the Woodlands, and it was racially and sexually explicit. It was, I had asked about it. I said, can we talk about this? That particular issue was not talked about, but it was reported on by media in the Woodlands. And the result of my question was for them to reiterate the diversity proclamation, which of course, what was a great idea. And then we also had some, political issues after that, which I won't go into. But I just kind of wanted to get an idea of what the TownshipFuture stance on that kind of languages, if that is an issue that they are willing to take a stance on. And then the other one was, yes, we don't want to talk about COVID, but COVID is happening, and it will be a really big deal for every parent and every educator, including myself, for probably the rest of the year. And Township has already made efforts to try and plan through December 2020, assuming that COVID will still be the same thing. So unfortunately, that does have to be an issue. So I just kind of wanted to get some input on just kind of what the TownshipFuture's stance is on those couple of issues.
So I can, on the two issues that you raised, one, the diversity proclamation, and then two, on COVID. And I was a little flip on COVID. I didn't mean it doesn't matter. Those of you who know me know that I'm obsessed with it, so it's okay. But on the diversity proclamation, our third governing principle covers that issue. It's been the tradition of this community to be open and welcoming, and in all areas. And that, we were founded that way. Interfaith is the perfect example of that. Interfaith was one of the first, if not the first, organization in the Woodlands. And it's all faiths together. That proclamation that was approved by the board was the third time that it was approved by the board. So it's a recurring commitment that this community does have to its history, its traditions, and its past. And we thought it was important enough to make it our third tenet of our governing. As we're not really commenting on the rest of it. We stay out of politics, and I'll give a personal opinion, not a TownshipFuture opinion, but that was not about diversity, it was about politics, and we stay out of politics. The other issue was on COVID. I think I would encourage everybody to watch the meeting tonight. There is a township meeting Wednesday night at 6 o'clock. And COVID is the first agenda item. You all are probably watching the stats the same way. We are watching the stats, and there's been, a great deal of interest, and that issue is going to gain prominence. It just has to. So I would encourage you to tune into the township board meeting Wednesday night, 6 o'clock. You can make your dinner while you're listening. It's happened before in my house that way. But it really does. It's a good idea to keep up on what's going on at the board meetings.
Amy, let me talk a little bit about COVID because that issue came up at our steering committee last night. We kind of struggled, we're just one group among many. How can we make an impact on this issue? And kind of what we are focusing in on is a support your local business campaign, encouraging people to shop where face masks are required and enforced. If you want to go to a restaurant, go to one that is following all the CDC guidelines about wearing face masks and sanitizing and things of that nature. We haven't quite figured out what we're going to do, but probably some kind of social media campaign more on that theme because, that's basically all we can do. We don't have any jurisdiction over people wearing face masks. But if we can get the peer pressure up enough, you go into HEB and you're the only one without a face mask, that kind of puts you in the other category. So since we all like to be with the big boys, hopefully we'll make face mask a big boy symbol. And so, hopefully we get that thing rolled out pretty quick. So that's kind of where we are in COVID. We realize it's a problem, but we realize that we can't wave magic wands. We don't have any policy ability to make big changes, but we hope through peer pressure and gathering the community in a sort of a support your local business type approach may have some traction.
Mhm.
All right, somebody else.
Emily, did we answer your question? Was that
Yes, you did. Thank you so much.
okay? Great, thanks.
All right, I see Bruce Cunningham down there. He wants to ask a question.
Oh, I'm fine, Walter.
All right. You had your chance.
Are you at Niagara Falls, Bruce?
I was.
It's beautiful.
You can change your background to whatever you like.
Yeah, I know. But I don't have a green screen, so it loses. There you go. Now you're in the Himalayas or somewhere.
Yeah.
Scotland.
Well, I think probably we're done then. I would, though, encourage you if you don't feel like asking your question either, on the chat or directly, feel free to contact us. You can reach any of us at info@townshipfuture.org. Imagine that you all got an email about this meeting from that email address. Just feel free to email us. And ask a question or ask for a call back. We're happy to talk to anybody who's interested in running or interested in helping others run, because for the next several months here, that's going to be a big part of our focus. Is that?
All right, thanks everybody. I'm going to
Thank
shut
you.
us down.
And can I make one last plug here?
Of course, Kara.
To visit our website if you have any questions whatsoever. Our charter is available at TownshipFuture.org, as are bios on each of our steering committee members. You can see resources for anybody considering a candidacy, and you can sign up for our email list or encourage others to do so. Also, please like us on Facebook or follow us on Twitter. We're going to be making a larger push on social media as we come into this campaign season. So you're going to see stronger messages from us, and we would love help if you could help share those messages out with the local community and spread the word. That's my plug.
It's fun to see you all tonight. Thank you so much for coming.
Great.
Right.
Bye.
All right,
Thank you.
have a good week.
Bye.